All right, welcome back to Tennessee Morning, 7:23 now the time. A recent ruling dealing with overtime is causing a lot of buzz.
Showing us how the case between actor Robert De Niro and his nanny could affect us all is our own legal eagle, Jim Higgins.
Yeah.
As we said earlier, Higgins in the house.
Higgins in the house. Yeah.
Thanks for visiting us. And
Sure.
so this is really a hot topic right now. A lot of people have salary pay, working overtime, not feeling like they're compensated for that overtime.
Right. And that what happened in this case against the actor Robert De Niro, it was his nanny. And the FLSA, the law that tells everybody they're entitled to overtime if they work over 40 hours a week, it applies to everybody. And in situations where a lot of folks just don't think about it, and here we have a guy who you know is surrounded by lawyers and accountants and everybody, and he didn't pay his nanny overtime and ended up having to pay about $30,000 to her.
Wow.
And of course what appears when you read the article on the case on it, what happened is what happens a lot in our office is everything's fine, they're all happy, they fire this young lady as their nanny, and then she gets mad and say, well, you know what? Y'all didn't pay me enough.
Right.
And that happens a lot.
How many business owners actually know about this, and how many follow? Is this a law, a hard?
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay.
It's
okay.
federal law.
So what is it exactly? If you are on salary and you work more than 40 hours, what should happen?
Well, that's what's interesting is a lot of people think that it's salary, that if you pay someone a salary that you don't have to pay them overtime. And where we get it in our employment law section is that's what's happening. It's usually smaller to medium-sized businesses. They'll just pay a salary. It's easier. They don't keep track of hours. But the problem is they work somebody, 50, 60 hours a week, and they're not paying overtime. Just because you're paying salary doesn't mean you don't have to pay someone overtime. It really breaks down to what type of job they do. And normally under the federal law, it's kind of a white collar, blue collar breakdown normally. If somebody is working at a McDonald's and they're doing the fries and they're cooking the burgers, and they may say, hey, we're going to call you manager and pay you a salary. Well, it doesn't work that way. As long as they're really just that worker, they're entitled to overtime. And what we see over the past couple of years, we have this employment law section in our office, and I bet 80% of it is overtime cases now. And the only thing that I can really figure it is that once all these people are starting to get laid off and losing their job, they may have raised this issue with their employer, but they were always too afraid to do it while they were working there.
Right.
And then when they lose it, they say, okay, you owe me that money.
And that's another thing, too. It brings me to another question I had, which is, once someone's already left a job, they bring this to you, they come in, they say, here's the thing, I was working all this overtime, I want my compensation for that. How easy is it to actually be able to make a case of this? Is this something that really is quite common that you guys just, work with all the time, or is this something where it's like, oh, depending on the circumstance?
Well, both of those. I mean, we work with it all the time. There are some cases that people will bring me their paychecks and it will say 50 hours worked, and it will have all their time, and they won't be getting overtime, and that's very simple. We just have to come in, we talk to their employer usually and say, listen, you owe them this time. Under the law, they're entitled to liquidated damages, which is double pay.
Wow.
They're entitled to have their attorney's fees paid. So it's a pretty big hit, so that's something that the employer really needs to be cautious about. And then there's other cases where companies and especially small businesses keep horrible records, and those can be a big mess, and you just have to jump in and dig.
Wow.
Well, if you have any questions for Jim Higgins and his team over there at Legal Eagles, as Higgins in the house, as we say, 1-800-705-2121, whether it's about overtime pay or anything else, you can also go to the website there, thehigginsfirm.com. You can email those questions as well to us at TennesseeMornings@fox17.com. Jim, thank you. Good to see you.
Guys.
Yeah,
Good seeing you.
thanks for coming in.
Sure.
Let's get a check of our weather forecast now. Let's talk about this.